April, welcome to Diaspora Food Stories. How are you?
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. I am great. I'm calling in from beautiful Barbados, and it's just great to be talking to you about all the things that we love the most here in Barbados, which is
Oh,
food and drink.
and I'm so jealous. I was blessed to be there last week for the Caribbean Travel Marketplace. That was amazing. And we're going to get into that because this was the first year that Barbados has been the host. So, very exciting. And, I think Barbados has been an island that has been on so many people's radar. So I'm excited to dive into give our listeners around the world just that look and that feel of all things Barbados and what is happening on the island. But before we go there, let's learn a little bit about you because your story is also bringing passion and enthusiasm to the role that you fulfill
Mhm.
as leading public relations for the Barbados Tourism Office. So tell us a little bit about April. Born and raised in Barbados?
Born and raised in Barbados, and up to the age of 18, I
Okay.
lived here. And then I actually moved over to the US for 4 years to do my bachelor's degree in journalism and media because I always loved writing, more creative so, but I felt like, I want to make a career out of this. And, back in that time, my mother was like, what career are you going to make out of being a writer? Course. So that kind of forced me to look around and explore some of the areas that would allow me to express myself creatively, but still, pay the bills.
Hmm.
I got into the world of journalism and mass comm, and
Awesome.
coming out of that, this the school I went to, they felt like you needed to really be well rounded, and so they exposed you to a lot of other disciplines. And I did come across more of the business side, and I liked that. And I saw that public relations was kind of like that bridge between more of the media and comms, but then
Hmm.
also a little business. So I kind of found myself eventually going down that path. And I've been blessed then to get some really amazing opportunities to work both in publishing at home, both in fashion and retail in Canada. And then more recently, coming back home and working in the tourism and hotel industry, previously for Sandy Lane Hotel, and now here at the BTMI, where we're servicing, Barbados across the globe. So we have
Hmm.
offices in the US, in Canada, in the Caribbean and Latin America, in the UK and Europe. So I'm responsible for the public relations that goes out through all of those offices.
Wow, that is a big job. And I believe you guys are opening a bureau in Panama.
So, well, the minister is always pushing us for it to be ASAP, but realistically, it does look like it's going to happen around mid-June,
Oh,
towards the end
wow.
of June next month. We're going to have a fully staffed office in Panama, and that's really just showing that while traditionally, and I mean this is not unique to Barbados. I think the
Mhm,
Caribbean islands, because of our history, traditionally our source market for tourists has been the UK,
mhm,
that
mhm.
kind of British middle-aged guy who comes down here and just kind of blows this money. That's been traditionally our bread and butter. But
Right.
in recent times, we have a prime minister who's very focused on the diversification
Mhm.
of not just our economy, but then even as you look at tourism as one of the main GDP earners, how can
Mhm.
we diversify that so that we're not just relying on one market. I mean, everybody's
Right.
what happens with COVID, and if you have all of your eggs in one basket, that's it. You know,
Mhm.
I think they're now looking even more so aggressively. It's been tossed around in the past, but I think now is really the time where we're getting it done. We're
Mhm.
establishing that office. We're going after Latin America in a major way. Opening that door. We do have the flight directly from Barbados to Panama
Okay.
already, so it's just building on that. Making Panamanians and just the wider Latin American community more aware of Barbados. I mean, we're
Right.
only 3 hours away, you know,
Right.
so it's like, why not? If people will come 8 hours from England to vacation in Barbados, why wouldn't you fly 3 hours? So, um, yeah, a
Absolutely.
lot is happening. A lot is happening with Barbados and with tourism and things that we can be proud about as well.
Absolutely. So as you're folding in stories as a professional and also personally, what are some of those memories that you bring in as you're talking about Barbados, whether personally or professionally?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of us had, especially, and dating myself a little bit, of course, and that's fine. But we all kind of grew up at this stage in that pre social media era.
Hmm.
So I think they say that my generation was the last one that played outdoors. um,
I'm there.
right? So we have those really rich memories, I think, of Barbados before, when we were a lot more of a community in terms of people being outside and everybody knowing everybody, and that's really the foundation on which a lot of Barbadian businesses, communities, establishments are built. If you look at even a lot of the thriving restaurants, they're in communities and they're supported by those in the community. And then when people visit Barbados, they kind of just build on that.
Hmm.
But I think taking that community and that familiarity that we have with each other and pouring it into everything that we do, so that you'll see that a lot of the communications that come out from us, they're very warm, they're very personal, very inviting. Everything that we do, that's not put on. That is who we are.
Hmm.
We go down the street and we see everybody that we know, and everybody is somebody's aunt or cousin or uncle or something. And so that relatability is what people love about Barbados and coming back there. And so when we're telling our stories, that's what we put out there. It's that friendliness, it's that very casual nature, and yeah. So that authentic voice, I make sure, even with my team, whatever we're putting out, just try to make it as personable as possible. I invite them and encourage them to use their own perspectives and their own stories. And yeah, that's how we communicate who we are with the world.
Awesome, awesome. So I met the PR rep from the U.S. Virgin Islands, and she's Bajan, and you probably know her, Miss Young. And one thing she said that really stood out is she said that her mom told her that food is our language. And that was so powerful, so powerful. So let's talk about the food. I mean, I think I ate and ate and drank. But the food, it
Mhm.
definitely defines a country, a people, a nation. What are some of those favorites that you're gonna get? You're gonna get your classics, right? We've got some of the foods that we're all familiar with, but what are some other ones that dishes and that you need to get when you're on the island?
I think what is so special about it. I think is just the variety of foods you're going to find on the island. We talk a lot about having over 400 culinary establishments or eateries, from shacks on the beach all the way to the fine dining restaurants. Just
Mhm.
like everything there. But I think in terms of the ones you have to get, I'll start with kind of like a staple
Mhm.
in every Barbadian or Bajan's Sunday food. So Sunday food is like the ultimate food you can get. So on Sundays, that's when you'll get three different types of meats happening on the plate,
Mm.
maybe three different starches, vegetables done, both fresh salads, steamed vegetables. Like you're going to get plantain, you're going to get everything happening on a Sunday plate. Like it's a pretty big plate, and it's like
Wow.
everything is full. Think of like Christmas Day. That's like a Sunday. When you hear a Bajan say, "I want a Sunday food," that's what they mean. They mean
Okay. I want
warm,
the Sunday food. Okay.
all of it there. There's no burgers, there's no fries, there's no hot dogs, there's just food. And so a staple on that plate, one of the more traditional Barbadian ones, is macaroni pie.
Okay.
Now, the closest reference for outsiders would be a mac and cheese, right?
Okay.
It's the closest reference, but it is not the same. And I learned this the hard way. As I said, I left Barbados when I was 18 to study in the US.
Mhm.
And, they were making mac and cheese. So this is my first time in a dorm. And, these girls, it's Friday night and they're making this mac and cheese. And I'm like, oh, it's like macaroni
In the
pie.
dorm, huh? All right.
Right? And they're like, no, no. And they make this thing. And I'm like, yeah, no, this is not macaroni pie. So the next weekend, I got as many ingredients as I could, and I made them macaroni pie. And they were like, this is not even the same thing. I'm like, I know. It's so rich. It's we have a special cheese that we use for it. There's not
Mm.
just any cheese, and it's not Kraft cheese either.
Okay.
There's a very rich cheese, and then we use our elbows, our little pasta elbows, and then we have a few secret ingredients, and we mix that up, and then we bake that. We sprinkle it with some breadcrumbs, and everybody will have their variation and say that theirs is the best. Some people have a 3 cheese macaroni pie.
Mm.
There are little competitions running, but macaroni pie is definitely number one on the list. And then a traditional Saturday meal is what we call pudding and sauce, and that is goes back to slave days. We're talking about people who had the ends and the scraps of
Okay.
the pig, and that's
Mhm.
kind of all they were left with at the end of the week to cook with. And they made what they call a sauce out of that, um,
Okay.
and it's accompanied by a brown pudding.
Oh.
And it's traditionally a poor person's meal, but
Okay.
it's reached the stage where you have even gourmet versions of them. And it's a tradition that has carried on, like every Saturday morning, people are eating pudding and sauce all around the country. So those are
Wow.
the two things that I can go on, but those are the two things that right now, if you come, you definitely have to have.
Now I learned of one other dish.
Mhm.
Let me see. Is it cuckoo?
Who? I was going to say, I feel like if anybody heard this, they would probably admonish me for not mentioning our national dish. But that is because there is currently a tussle going on between the older generations and the younger generations
Oh.
over the switch into what is our national dish. So
Okay.
the official national dish of Barbados is cuckoo and
Okay.
flying fish.
Okay.
So cuckoo is made from the breadfruit, which is a fruit that grows on a tree, similar to jackfruit, most
Mm-hmm.
people are familiar with. And that's taken, it's mixed. It's a really grueling process to make it. And so it's not very popular among young people to make. But back in the day, women would just go, and they would, the mothers of the household, and they'd be making this cuckoo, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
labor of love. And
Mm-hmm.
flying fish, which is, like I said, part of the national dish.
Mm-hmm.
They would then, steam that and so on and put that with it. And it was a meal. So
Okay.
growing up, a lot of us saw that as, I don't want to eat that. That's like gross. And then we started, going more and more towards the macaroni pie. So
Okay.
the young people claim chicken and macaroni pie as our national dish,
Uh-oh.
and the older ones claim the traditional cuckoo and flying fish. So there's a little
Uh-oh.
going through there. But yes, cuckoo is um, our national dish.
Wow. But one thing they cannot contest is rum. Rum, rum, rum,
No,
right?
so old, young, everything in between. Rum is the spirit of choice
Wow.
for us.
Wow. And we had the opportunity to go to Montgay.
Mhm.
And uh, we had a wonderful tour, which was great. And just learning, and there the master blender is a black woman, which we
Yeah.
love,
Mhm.
joining Joyce in Jamaica, right? And so just amazing. But I know one of the things that came up as well is talking about future generations and things, but also I believe is under Barbados conservative efforts for greenery, right? Is sugarcane,
Yeah.
and how that's becoming less available
Mhm.
there on the island. And so, that was very interesting to learn in terms of, because I know you guys are doing a lot of planting and really getting, the greenery. Then, I love just the compostable, just the care and the attention that you guys have toward the environment. Love, love, love.
Yeah.
Going to the parks, don't litter, all of that. And not saying, I don't even see that much here in the States, I'll be honest with you. Of course we're green and all of that, but I mean just the signs and just the effort and things that you guys
Yeah.
are putting into this
And
climate.
I think that comes from just an awareness of the effects of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Our, as part of the opening for CHD, I remember the Prime Minister, as part of her opening remarks, she was talking about, it's not climate change, it's the climate crisis. And that's
Mm-hmm.
because I think the conversation is a lot different for us in the Caribbean, namely because a lot of the effects of this climate change or this climate crisis, it does impact us directly and more severely. And so we see it and we feel it in a way that we can't deny. So when you see the change in hurricanes happening, Barbados, thank God, has not been hit by a major hurricane in
Mhm.
decades.
Mhm.
But, we've seen some of our brothers and sisters from other Caribbean islands being affected by it. People losing homes, and it's
Mhm.
devastating to see the real impacts of it. And I think so for us, it makes us a lot more conscious of our surroundings and our environment. We see a lot more quickly how things are changing, temperature
Mhm.
changes, the seasons are changing here. So I think for us, there's an overall consciousness about what's happening. And I think it hasn't gotten to a lot of those major cities around the world yet,
Mhm.
but eventually it will. So we have started adopting a lot of practices to kind of, mitigate as much as we can, because,
Right.
we aren't the ones that are necessarily causing it,
Right.
but we're definitely feeling the effects. So we do our part, to help ourselves out, and so on. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So for those who are familiar or maybe not as familiar with Barbados, let's just pull out the map here,
Yeah.
right? So you said 3 hours from Panama,
Hmm.
Central America, but you're not too far from Guyana. So you've got that
No.
tip there, which
Yeah.
means you're close to not too far from Venezuela either. And
Mhm.
then definitely not too far from Trinidad and Tobago,
Yeah.
right?
Just 30 minutes from Trinidad and Tobago.
There you go. And so with that being, what are some of your other sister islands around you?
So the closest islands would definitely be St. Vincent and the Grenadines,
Okay.
and Trinidad and Tobago.
Mhm.
Those are kind of like neighboring islands. And we're very close in a community there. It's funny because the Caribbean is, geographically like that, and Barbados is right here. So we're the furthest out, which puts us in a position where it kind of makes us feel further away. But we're definitely not. We're definitely connected. We have a lot of, interregional travel happening.
Mhm.
A lot of us know, persons from other Caribbean islands. A lot of us have families there.
Mhm.
And funny enough, probably one of the most traveled places to from Barbados is Miami. So
Okay.
Miami is also just 3 hours away,
Yeah.
and like their daily flights to Miami, they're always full. Barbadians are always going and coming back because we have a lot of family in the U.S.
Mhm.
Miami, Boston, New York City, Atlanta, and Chicago. Those are kind of
Okay.
where you'll see a lot of Barbadian expats.
And then you know what? Charlotte seems to be on the list
As
too,
well.
in terms of a route.
Yes, because we do have that kind of a history. They say that Barbados is the only colony that founded a colony. If you look back at the history of us going to Charleston,
Mhm.
and kind of setting up there, so there is that connectivity, and I think they still do a lot of cross promotion there. I
Okay.
actually think a group, is coming down for Funa Rum this year, so there's
Okay.
a lot of connection that, we're still building on, and kind of like renewing it and finding a new way to relate to each other, and not necessarily the history that we had.
Awesome. And I know some of the talk, especially with President Nicola, was really talking about. I know you have the neighboring islands that I'm sure there's a lot of hopping to, but getting tourists to do more of that, right? Because sometimes when we come, we're just in Barbados. We don't necessarily hop like we would if we were in Europe, right? Of course, there's no train to take us between island and island or necessarily a boat or whatever. But how to encourage that, like you said, if you're right next to um, these neighboring islands to be able to make that part of the agenda. So I know that was one of the conversations that was saying too. So and looking at that.
For sure. And they term it multi-destinational travel.
Hmm.
That is kind of a dream of many. I think they look at the model, for example, people talk about, dreaming of going Euro hopping,
Hmm.
so
Okay.
they'll take a backpack through Europe. So nobody really goes to just Spain alone. Like, you're going to go to England and then you're going to hit
Hmm.
all of them. You want to see Spain, you want to see France, you want to see
Right.
Italy and, Greece, and you go all the way down. And I think that's because, obviously, history aside, I think each of them, kind of have their unique, selling points that, you feel like you have to see or experience all. And I think similarly, we feel like, if you're coming 4 or 5 hours, you're flying to the Caribbean, why not take a plane and go 30 minutes and see, St. Vincent, you want to see Dominica. And that's because all the Caribbean islands, I mean, on the outset, they may look very similar and sound very similar, but all the Caribbean islands are so different, and we all have like our unique attributes to us, whether it's in our accent or the foods that we eat. Some of us are more nature focused, so you'll see a lot more in like Dominique and stuff like that. You'll get all the, the natural wonders and the waterfalls and stuff like that. So it depends on what you're looking for. And you can have so many different types of Caribbean experiences by hitting the different islands. If you come to one, you're kind of cheating yourself, and you want to see and even understand for yourself what the differences are. So yeah.
So then let's talk about that. Because Barbados is not just beaches, right? There's
No.
so much to offer, and you offer something different for everybody, right? So whether you want luxury, of course, whether you want sort of just not necessarily luxury, but a step down to where it's still great. And then there's some that are that eco-minded, right? So let's talk about sort of the various lifestyles that Barbados caters to.
Yeah, so I mean, if I had to say it, and I mean, I know it's going to sound biased, but I think that Barbados really has the best of all of the Caribbean experiences. So where there's some Caribbean islands that are, all about that nature and eco-friendly experience, we may not have all that they have, but we have some of it. Some are more, more luxury focused and just a playground for the rich. We're not all that, but we have some of it. So Barbados has some of everything. As you mentioned, you can come and do the full luxury experience, staying at the renowned Sandy Lane Hotel, 5-diamond, 5-star property. And lots of our villas also fall into that kind of 5-star category: personal staff, butler, chef, et cetera. All the luxurious golf courses, you can do that. We also have our first completely off the grid hotel. It's on the East Coast. It's called Eco Lifestyle and Lodge. And that is just for that full rustic getaway experience. It's nestled just in this like canopy, and there's all the water experiences. The chef there is cooking all natural, locally sourced organic meals, so you can have that experience. If you want to come and you want to go more the adventure side of things, we have that as well. There's nightlife, so there's all types of experiences that you can have in Barbados, depending on what you're looking for.
Gotcha. So speaking of that, because there's east side, west side, is there a north and south?
There is. So each
Okay.
coast kind of has like its own personality they kind of take on. So the West Coast, which is probably the one, if you Google, you're going to see that first.
Okay.
And that's what we call the Platinum Coast. And that's
Okay.
where a lot of those really high-end properties are located. You'll see a lot of the tranquil waters. All of our beaches are free and public. I just have to put that in there. But that's where you'll get your calm waters. People will do a lot of snorkeling, swimming with the turtles, catamaran cruises, all that kind of stuff happens on the west side.
Okay.
On the east, that's where we abound with the Atlantic Ocean. So you have a lot rougher waters, and that's where you'll have a lot of your adventure activities and sports happening. On the water-based side, you'll have things like surfing. So we actually hold a really large surfing tournament each April, the World Surfing League, and it was just upgraded to QS 5000. So that means that you have a lot of top international surfers.
Wow. And I didn't know Barbados was really in that whole surfing
Oh,
realm. And the
so
gentleman from Zimmy Cafe was a surfer too, is a
there you
surfer. So I
go.
was like, wow.
And Zemi Cafe is located again on that East Coast. So you'll see all those really rough waters. That's where you get the really, really high tides. And so you have that kind of hardcore adventure. Those kind of people stay over there. On the South Coast, then, that's where you'll find the younger people, the nightlife, lots of restaurants. We have St. Lawrence Gap, which is like, I don't want to say our Vegas Strip, but it's the closest comparison I can get to. So you have a lot of nightclubs concentrated in that area.
Okay.
So that's kind of like what happens there. And then the north is just kind of a peaceful, remote getaway, if you want to go for a nice drive and just escape the hustle and bustle. So yeah, each as small as Barbados is, that
Mhm.
there's so much diversity in the landscape and the activities. That's really, I think, what makes it so unique.
Awesome. So events, no crop over, which some know other parts of the world as Carnival,
Yeah.
is coming up in July, I believe. So that's a big time. What are some other events that brings people to the island?
So I think I would say this is probably the second thing that differentiates Barbados from some of the other Caribbean islands. Our monthly calendar of activities. When I tell you there's always something happening in Barbados, I mean, you could start the year off with the sailing week. We have a Round Barbados Sailing Week that's happening every January. You can go then right into a lot of those soft sporting cricket activities. So cricket is our national sport. I know it's not so popular in the US, but you
Mhm.
have people flying in from England, from Ireland, from India and Pakistan and so on, just to see these cricket matches happening
Wow.
throughout the year. You can have a reggae festival, which is happening around April. You can have our gospel festival, which happens as well. Like when I tell you, like there's always activities happening, I absolutely mean it. There's always something we're looking forward to. This year, for the first time, we're going to be hosting FabaFest. That's
Okay.
for alumni by alumni, and
I
that's
heard of
yes.
that.
So
HBCUs, yes.
they're descending on us in a month's time. And so that's going to be around the Juneteenth weekend. And there's going to be a host of activities happening around that, so all those kind of foodie experiences,
Nice.
party experiences, all that's going to be going on in Barbados next month. And as you said, that's just right before our Crop Over Festival, which technically starts from June and runs throughout the summer, and it culminates in a grand Kadooment parade, which is a street parade that looks more like the carnivals that you'd be familiar with.
Mhm.
So everybody's in costume with their feathers. You'll see celebrities like, Lewis Hamilton. We've had Rihanna. We've had all types of people. Rihanna used to come like every other year. Obviously, she's otherwise engaged. You know?
Yes.
But she does have some interest in crop over through her brother, who's still very actively connected to one of the bands that's on
Okay.
board Kadooment Day. So that happens, and then that takes us then into the latter part of the year, where we have the Barbados Food and Rum Festival in
Okay.
October, and then the Run Barbados Marathon weekend in December. So there's just always something. Whatever time of year you're planning to come to Barbados, you're going to have something to do.
Awesome, awesome. So let's get a little, you mentioned Rihanna getting into the music, right?
Yeah.
So obviously she's one of many stars that hails from the island. Who are some other artists that you guys are proud to be Bajan?
Oh man, we have so many and in so many different genres. So again, we grew up on an appetite of, all types of music. We do have our traditional forms of music for the Caribbean and Barbados in particular. Um, and one of them that we do promote is soca, which is
Mhm.
is similar to calypso, but it's kind of that fast paced, fast beat happening. And we have stars like Rupi, who's been very popular throughout North America, especially. We have Allison Hines, Lil Rick, and a number of them that have actually, sold out crowds in New York, in Boston, in Toronto, and so on, and they continue to do so. And then on the pop side, we have, of course, Rihanna. We also have Amanda Reefer, who actually just last year I think was nominated for her first Grammy on a
Nice.
she was on with Kendrick Lamar. So she went up and we followed her whole journey on Instagram of attending her first Grammy award. So again, small country, just 280,000 people on this island, but still we can make it to the Grammys. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
Awesome, awesome. And so have a new minister of tourism, Minister Ian Gooding
Echo.
Etchell, right? Just joined last year. What are some other, you mentioned that, with this new office opening in Panama, what else, his vision, how else are we going to forward to that expanding this year for tourism?
Yeah, so I definitely think that Barbados, it's interesting because Barbados is pretty established as a tourism destination. Like over 60 years, we've been, inviting people here, putting them up, showing them a good time. And then when you get to that stage where, you've kind of done that so well, it's hard to then figure, okay, how can we grow past that? What makes more sense? Like, what are new avenues that we can explore? And so, setting up that office in Latin America has been, a major part of the vision that he has for doing that. So like really looking at how we can expand on, the business we already have coming from Latin America. That's one. We actually just got back 2 or 3 weeks ago from Dubai. And that was to attend an Arabian travel show that was there. And again, solidifying our interest in expanding business out of the Middle East now.
Okay.
So, last year, he signed air services agreements with the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Transport for Saudi Arabia. That was last November, December, to start, open up the possibility now of looking at airlift between the regions. So we found that, when we were in Dubai, for example, we learned that, a lot of Emiratis, they actually leave Dubai during the summer because it's unbearably hot. A lot of them head to the east coast of US. So you'll find a lot of them
there too, but maybe it's not that hot. But I mean, New York is still hot, but okay.
No, they apparently it is crazy weather in the summer. So a lot of them will own homes either in Miami, New York, New Jersey, so on, and they'll come and spend their summers in the US. So, we're saying to them, well, hey, you guys are flying all the way to the US for 2 months, take a couple of weeks off that and come to Barbados. So, looking at exploring those opportunities, some low-hanging fruit, some you'll really have to develop over the years. But I think what he's terming them as the new and emerging markets, so Latin America, as I just mentioned, the Middle East, those are his two areas of focus on the land-based side. But then also cruise, because we do have a pretty huge cruise component. There are a lot of people who come and cruise either to Barbados or they come and, fly to cruise out of Barbados and come back. So that's also, we see a good 600,000 people in and out of Barbados just for cruising alone. So looking to build that out more, especially in the summer, how do we get more cruises to come here? So those are kind of the three areas that I think he's really going after during his term here. So it'll be interesting, to see that develop.
Now, April, I have to ask about Africa because I don't know. There was some talks about that, I think right now, I don't believe that that's too far from Barbados, but I know the logistics, right? There's got to be travel there and all of that. But in terms of conversation starting, is there something that's sort of brewing to get, it may take years or whatever, but at least there's a conversation going.
Oh, definitely. And that I think even beyond the minister is more so led by the prime minister and kind of one of her areas that she's kind of, holding close to her chest and dealing with as well. I think definitely looking at the diaspora connection has always been something that was important to us. But as you said, it's just the logistics of it. Getting here is the hardest part. The desire is there on both ends. We're collaborating on both ends. We have embassies there that we are in communication with. We do put on events with them, usually around music. We are looking to do one around food as well. So like there are different areas that we're looking at building that out. And it's going to start with, having a representation there. So that's kind of the first step. And we've started to put people in place. After that, you start building relationships and stuff like that. And then you can get to the point of seeing it as a feasible market that you can have airlift coming to and fro, tour packages put on, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a work in progress, but the conversation has started and people are being mobilized and
That is very exciting, very exciting. And so last but not least, let's talk a little bit about you being the host of the Caribbean Travel Marketplace. This is the 41st year, first time hosted in Barbados. And for those who don't know, it's basically, I like to say it's sort of the fancy food show of Caribbean travel, right? Where you get to meet different destinations, different properties available at destinations. And Barbados was the host this year. Last year, they brought it back after COVID. That was in Puerto Rico. It's usually in Puerto Rico, Bahamas, Jamaica. So how was that experience hosting it this year?
I think it was definitely an invigorating experience for us. It was the first major B2B conference that we've had since COVID. Normally, we would have our own kind of smaller version of that happening around May, but this gave us the opportunity not just to come back with a B2B conference, but to come back with the B2B conference. It gave us the opportunity to display a lot of our culture, a lot of our food, our culinary experiences. And it got us, the opportunity to connect with a lot of partners that we hadn't seen in a very long time. A lot of media we hadn't seen in a very long time as well. And I think overall, coming out of it, the successes that we saw, a lot of the press conferences hit on some of them. But I think overall, it was a really good showing of who Barbados is. It was great to be a host and to show people our culture, not just in a pamphlet or a brochure, but, give them the opportunity to experience it, to taste it, to feel it, to see it. The opening ceremony, the closing ceremony with that fire display and the lights in the sky. And it was a good time, and I think it reinvigorated a lot of people's passion for Barbados and for tourism, for travel, just getting out there and seeing the world again. So I think all in all, it was a success. Sorry. We were glad and proud to be hosts, and we're just so happy that everyone had such a good time.
Awesome, awesome. Well, definitely, like I said, I look forward to returning to the island, exploring more of the different coastlines for
Yeah.
sure. So thank you. As we wrap up our talk today, I want to ask you final question. Give me 3 words to describe Barbados. If you had to describe your country, give me 3 words.
Food, rum, and fun. That's
I
it.
love it. I love it. Well, April, if anyone wants to connect and learn more about what to do, how to plan their trip to the island, where do they go?
www.visitbarbados.org. You'll find everything there, especially as I am the person also responsible for the Food and Rum Festival. I'll tell them to check that out October 19th to 22nd, and
Okay.
definitely all that activity and information for planning that trip will be there.
Wonderful. And then where can they find you on social media?
So I personally on Instagram as Aprille Writes. So that's Aprille Writes, WRITES.
Okay. And for Barbados, if they want to
And
follow
for
Barbados as well?
Barbados, you have our main platform is at Visit Barbados on Instagram, at Barbados on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, again, April, this has been great. I hope our listeners get a wealth of information to plan their next visit or their first visit to the island. And again, we look forward to just watching as you guys just continue to do your thing. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And this is Cherie, another great episode of Diaspora Food Stories. And until our next episode, be well.